Microsoft is easily one of the most recognizable names in tech, as its Windows operating system, which was first released in 1985, is now being used by over 1.3 billion people worldwide. That's 1 out of every 8 people on the planet. The global company, which began as a garage startup by 2 friends, now has a jaw-dropping estimated worth of $2.5 trillion and has not only revolutionized modern computing, but has also shaped the technological landscape for decades to come. But the story of how things got here is one of genius, ambition, failures, and a ruthless pursuit of power. So come along as we uncover the secrets behind Microsoft's meteoric rise and its impact on the world of PC software, gaming, cloud computing, and everything in between, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Inspiration and founding. This story, unlike you may have imagined, does not start with Bill Gates, but with Paul Allen. Although Bill Gates came aboard early on and helped co-found the company with his friend, even the name of the company, Microsoft, a combination of the words microcomputer and software, was proposed by Paul Allen. In 1975, Allen, who was a 22-year-old computer programmer at the time, got struck with an idea that would change his life and that of billions of others around the world. He held in his hands a copy of the popular electronics magazine when he saw an image of the Altair 8800 microcomputer. Allen then got the inspiration to develop an interpreter using the programming language, beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code, BASIC, for the Altair 8800. In Paul Allen's thinking, this could make the microcomputer easier to use for programmers, thereby driving down the cost. He predicted that it would create a market for commercial software, making it a viable business plan. And as time has proven, he couldn't have been more right. Allen presented this idea to his childhood friend Bill Gates, a fellow programming enthusiast. Gates was enrolled at Harvard University in Cambridge at the time for pre-law. Together, they fleshed out the idea and presented it to Ed Roberts, founder of Micro-Instrumentation Telemetry Systems, MITS. Roberts asked to see their interpreter, and they offered to present this idea to him in person. Gates and Allen had to fly to MITS headquarters in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the meeting. But here's the kicker. At the time, Gates and Allen didn't even own an Altair, let alone the BASIC interpreter. They merely wanted to see how others reacted to it. The friends had to quickly work on one up until the day of the meeting, and they almost left out one of the key components in writing the code for their program. However, by the time the day of the meeting rolled around, they had down most parts of the code and put the finishing touches to it on their way to MITS offices. The first time they ran the program was at the meeting, and it worked perfectly. This daring move would come to characterize their time at Microsoft. The meeting was successful, and MITS agreed to distribute the interpreter as Altair BASIC. Allen quit his job as a computer programmer at Honeywell and convinced Bill Gates, who was 19 at the time, to drop out of school to pursue this business idea. Together, they founded Microsoft in 1976 and incorporated the company in Albuquerque the following year, with the gross income of their newly created company estimated to be about $1 million. Growth through IBM. The new interpreter became immensely popular in programming circles, but with this growth came the need for more skilled programmers. Unfortunately, the budding company was finding it hard to recruit the personnel they needed out in the Southwest. This led Gates and Allen to decide to move their headquarters to Bellevue, Washington on the 1st of January 1979. However, the real turning point that changed the course of Microsoft and propelled it to the forefront of computer software programming came the following year when they secured a contract with the technology giant IBM. IBM was building a computer, the IBM PC Model 5150 home computer, and they needed an operating system, so they contracted Microsoft to build one for them. Interestingly, Microsoft did not have this product, and in a move some may term sneaky, Gates and Allen contacted a third-party company, Seattle Computer Products, SCP, to buy and license their operating system, the QDOS, for just $50,000. This type of dealings would come to characterize Microsoft in the 90s, and as Bill Gates showed, he had no problems operating in the gray areas and pursuing a monopoly with ruthless efficiency. This winner-take-all competitive spirit was one of the driving forces of the growth of Microsoft, but it is also one of the reasons why the company had many missteps and failed products, as you'll soon come to see. But back to the QDOS. Having bought and licensed QDOS, Gates began to modify and write new code to make the OS compatible with the computer IBM was set to launch. It was given a new name, Mississippi. DOS and Microsoft also negotiated a contract with IBM to allow it to keep control of the OS. This move was genius, as it allowed Microsoft to leverage on the hardware IBM provided, making its operating system everywhere. MS-DOS was a huge success, and by 1983, Microsoft had exceeded $55 million in revenue. In the space of a few years, the company had created and controlled a huge market share of the home computing software market as more and more computers found their way into workplaces and homes across America. More innovations and the first giant stumble. The 80s was the age of innovation, and the software world was changing rapidly by day. In 1983, Microsoft launched Multi-Tool Word, a software program that used mouse-based input for navigation of its graphical user interface, or GUI. This "what you see is what you get" visual interface was to become a fixture in the programming world for years to come. Next came the launch of Windows 1.0 in 1985. Following the launch was a lawsuit against Microsoft by Apple, a lawsuit Microsoft won and Apple lost. Apple has claimed Microsoft has infringed upon its GUIs by developing Windows 1.0. However, in a cruel twist of fate, Apple would then get sued by Xerox for GUI copyright infringement. The good news for Microsoft, though, was that owning Windows provided them a launchpad for another software product, Excel. This was quite a significant moment in Microsoft's history, as it allowed the company to create the Microsoft Office package. 1985 was a good year for the company, as it scored another deal with IBM to make MS-DOS the default operating system for its new line of computers. This deal was a masterstroke, an even sweeter one than the last deal, as it ensured that Microsoft could sell and license the operating system to other companies, while also simultaneously gaining more control of the home computing market. By 1989, Microsoft decided to put all its products in one package and released Microsoft Office. This move to bundle everything together into one package helped Microsoft commandeer more market share of the emerging software market and in effect essentially create a monopoly that would last decades. However, Microsoft made a costly mistake that would be fatal: the Internet. Internet use had begun to rise among users, and most people were going online for the first time. Microsoft ignored this growth and prioritized software development instead, releasing Windows 3.0 in 1990, followed by the major release of Windows 95 in 1995. The launch of Windows 95 was a seminal moment in the company's history and featured an outsized marketing campaign with a budget of $200 million. From commercials featuring the Rolling Stones' single "Start Me Up" to a 30-minute sitcom with the main plotline revolving around the Windows 95 featuring Friends stars Jennifer Aniston and Matthew Perry. Microsoft really pulled out all the stops on this. The company also took out ads in the New York Times and bought 1.5 million copies of the paper to give away for free. The Empire State Building was lit with colors which matched the Windows logo, and over in Canada, a 335th banner was unveiled and hung on the CN Tower, and Jay Leno was contracted to host the launch party. Ultimately, this marketing gimmick worked, as Windows 95 would go on to sell 1 million copies in the first 4 days. Coincidentally, this was also the year that Microsoft began to take the Internet seriously as more people used the Internet. Thus came the birth of the Internet Explorer, but by then it was too late. Not content to let the market decide which browser was the best product, the company mimicked their earlier strategy of bundling software together and offering them as a package deal. Internet Explorer and Windows were offered together as a package deal, causing many competitors to cry foul and accuse Microsoft of trying to create a monopoly in the browser market. Protests by Mark Andreessen, one of the founders of Netscape, piqued the interest of the Justice Department, and in 1998, the U.S. Department of Justice and 20 state attorneys general charged Microsoft with violating antitrust laws by using its dominance to drive competitors out of business. In 2001, the company reached a settlement with the government imposing restrictions on its corporate practices. Microsoft's revenue by now had exceeded $11 billion, and the company was flying high. In contrast, Apple, one of their competitors, was ailing and in bad shape due to several bad decisions. The launch of their flagship product, the Apple PowerBook 5300, was a complete catastrophe. Apple's CEO Steve Jobs then made a shocking announcement that Microsoft had pledged to make a $150 million investment in Apple, essentially saving the company from the brink of bankruptcy. The announcement was shocking because it was a well-known fact Apple was engaged in a lawsuit with Microsoft over the use of its proprietary QuickTime codec to develop QuickTime for Windows applications. But with their generous donation, Microsoft was able to kill two birds with one stone, get some good PR, and make an inconvenient lawsuit vanish. Some might say this was a cynical move, but as we have seen throughout this story, Microsoft had no problems towing the line between legality and illegality with Gates at the helm of affairs. The company had by now grown into a technological juggernaut despite its legal battles with annual revenues exceeding $22 billion, crushing competitors and leaving dust in its wake in the relentless pursuit of market share despite its numerous legal battles. Dawn of change. The new millennia brought with it new changes, with Bill Gates stepping down from his role as CEO to serve as chief software architect, a role which he created for himself. This move, he claimed, would allow him to focus more on new software technologies whilst remaining chairman. According to Gates, the protracted legal battles with the DOJ had taken their toll and took all the fun out of the job. Steve Ballmer, a former classmate of Gates from law school and right-hand man who had been with Microsoft since 1980 in various capacities, was appointed to the top job of CEO. Paul Allen also resigned from his role as vice chairman from Microsoft's board of directors and sold most of his stake in the company. Allen had previously served as Microsoft's chief technologist, up until he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1983. However, the relationship between Gates and Allen had become strained, with Gates offering to buy out Allen's shares in the company. However, Allen refused to sell his shares, and ultimately, this move made him a billionaire in 1987 when the company went public. Gates also became the youngest self-made billionaire, while about 12,000 Microsoft employees became multimillionaires. When Steve Ballmer received the mantle, however, his reign proved less than ideal, as the company, now valued at $558 billion, struggled to transition into the new era. Despite dominating the consumer software market, the times were changing, and with the internet gaining greater prominence, it was getting increasingly easier to distribute software products. It was clear Microsoft needed a new direction. Struggles to diversify. In 2001, Microsoft launched the gaming console Xbox, successfully breaking into the crowded gaming market. Xbox Live, its online gaming network, was launched the following year, leveraging a successful hardware product launch to break into a new vertical for the company. However, from 2006 onwards, the fortunes of Microsoft changed. You see, Microsoft had made its fortune by cornering the market and creating a monopoly, and as such, the company never truly bothered to understand the consumer market. Naturally, this led to the launch of inferior products like Windows Vista and the Zune MP3 player. Zune was created to rival the considerably more popular iPod by Apple, but Microsoft struggled to convince the market to make the switch to Zune. Windows Vista also failed to impress, as many users found the operating system too cumbersome to use, preferring the previous Windows XP version. These failures were a result of the culture built in the early days of the company that prioritized quantity over quality. This approach was also evident in the release of Windows 7 OS. Despite addressing most of the issues users had with Windows Vista, Microsoft proceeded to release 6 different versions of the product: Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate. Not only did this confuse consumers, as most people did not know which version was right for them, but it also proved that Microsoft had yet to fully understand the consumer market. The Windows Phone was the final disastrous launch of the 2000s for Microsoft. There was nothing inherently wrong with the phone per se, but its launch was beset by various obstacles. The mobile OS on which Microsoft the phone ran was incompatible with most third-party applications like Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat. Microsoft approached Google to help create versions of these apps that ran on its OS, but Google refused, maintaining its stranglehold on the third-party app developer marketplace with the aid of its own Android operating system. This refusal ultimately proved fatal to the Windows Phone and essentially gave Microsoft a taste of its own medicine. Microsoft also launched Bing during this decade, but in what seems to be a recurring theme, they were 5 years too late. By this time, users had grown accustomed to using the Google search engine, and Bing could not compete. The company, however, ended the 2000s on a high note, controlling 86–92% of the world's operating market system. Turnarounds. After Microsoft had gotten several doses of failure, it was obvious that the company was altering as it began facing stiffer competition from several tech companies. Google had made solid inroads into the productivity software market by making its software completely free, a stark departure from Microsoft's strategy of boxed software. Microsoft was facing some serious pressure to reassert its dominance, and in 2011 launched Microsoft Office 365. Office 365 became hugely successful as it signaled Microsoft's move into cloud services. Afterwards, Microsoft proceeded to make its biggest acquisition to date, Skype, for a whopping $8.5 billion. Some industry observers wondered why Microsoft was making this move, considering it a massive overpay. Also, Microsoft already had its own voice-over internet protocol infrastructure, Live Messenger, which had 3 times the users of Skype, so the massive overpay for Skype's 124 million users didn't seem like a profitable move. However, it later came to light that Microsoft had bought Skype in a bid to forestall a potential deal between Facebook, Google, and Skype. This move was par for the course for Microsoft, and it represented its corporate strategy and culture of trying to one-up the competition. Although Microsoft was shifting focus into online software and cloud-based services, it released the Surface Range devices in 2012. These devices were the first to be designed internally by Microsoft for its Windows software, marking a radical departure from the way the company traditionally operated. The Surface devices were a huge success, but rather than take advantage of this success and consolidate its perception as a forward-thinking company, Microsoft opted to release Windows 8. The Windows 8 OS was not inherently a bad product, but it kind of had poor user experience due to its look and feel. Many users did not understand how to use the OS, and Microsoft once again dropped the ball by not adding basic tutorials. The design was also not consistent across tablet and desktop modes on certain Surface devices, making it clumsy and impractical. Overall, the company made a lot of giant changes in this period, and most of them were positive in their impact of securing the company's place as one of the biggest players in the tech space. But after over a decade at the helm, Steve Ballmer was ready to retire, leaving Microsoft with a new CEO, Satya Nadella. From the present into the future. Under its new leadership, Microsoft moved into a new direction, particularly as the culture around the company began changing. The company joined the Linux Foundation as a platinum member, a hugely symbolic gesture aimed at building the bridges burnt between Microsoft and its former enemies. In 2018, the company also purchased GitHub, the largest code repository in the world, for $7.5 billion in stock. Although the move caused some consternation amongst GitHub users as they feared that Microsoft would jeopardize the product, their fears were proven to be unfounded, as GitHub would go on to dominate the collaborative coding space for years to come. In 2019, the company reached $1 trillion market cap, becoming the third U.S. public firm to be valued at more than $1 trillion, following Apple and Amazon. Currently, the company has the 4th highest worldwide brand valuation and is the world's largest software provider by revenue. Despite its huge successes, Microsoft still hasn't backed down from its expansion plans, and the company recently announced its acquisition of an American video game developer and holding company, Activision Blizzard, in an all-cash transaction valued at $68.7 billion. Activision Blizzard is well known for creating brands such as Warcraft, Diablo, Call of Duty, StarCraft, Candy Crush Saga, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Skylanders, and Overwatch, among others. Also, having learnt from its previous mistakes in waiting too long, Microsoft made a move to acquire Bonsai in a bid to get into the budding artificial intelligence and machine learning scene. The company further announced an exclusive license for OpenAI's GPT-3 artificial intelligence language generator. And on January 23, 2023, Microsoft announced a new multi-year, multi-billion-dollar investment deal with ChatGPT developer OpenAI, placing the firm ahead of other AI tech giants such as Google, Amazon, and Apple. Although it is too early to declare a victor, and the fact is that there will be numerous winners in the field of generative AI, from the current trajectory of events, Microsoft should definitely be one of them. Ultimately, not many companies can make the mistakes Microsoft has made and survive. And for a company that, started the garage of two friends, it would be impossible to imagine the world of modern computing without Microsoft today. Since you watched this video to the end, you definitely should check out this next one.